Hey guys, what's up? Week 382, or 383, starting off to a bad start. Well, I got some bad news anyways. So the Patreon drawing bag, I usually keep it in the movie room, and I can't find it. It has all the names of the movies that haven't been drawn out. So I'm not going to do the draw at the end of this month. At the end of this video, I'm going to try to compile a list of all the stuff from the years of the Patreon and see which ones I haven't covered. It's going to be a work. If you guys just want to say screw it, if you've been a Patreon for a long time and just throw 5 new titles in the hat and just have me not do your name, let me know. I'll do that instead. But yeah, I'll message you guys and figure everything out. Sorry about that. You know, that bag has been with me since the beginning. The same bag, everything going in there. So it's just weird. It's like a 7-year-old Ziploc baggie with all the names in there, and it's getting fatter and fatter. And I screwed up. I lost it. I have no idea where it's at. But I guess we're going to have to start from scratch, or most likely I'll just have to find the movies that were in there. If you remember any, let me know. Also, I just want to thank everybody that stuck with me for a very long time. I was going back and looking at old comments. I stumbled on like a new comment on old videos, so I started going through the old comments, and I was like, man, some of these people have been commenting on these weekly videos since the very beginning, and I want to, I really appreciate it. I want to let you guys know that. There's some people that have disappeared, and I started to, I was wondering where some of them are. I was like, man, I wonder if, like, Peekaboo, who's there from the very beginning, Peekaboo, who is just always commenting and always leaving good comments and questions and stuff. I hope they're okay. You know, some of these people, they just come in and they disappear. You never really know what happens to them. It's kind of a strange thing, right? But let's hop into the reviews. The first one up is from Full Moon Video. Yeah. And this was originally going to be made in, the 80s or 90s from David Allen, who is like a special effects whiz for Full Moon. He did so much work for them, worked on the Puppet Master movies and a bunch of other things like that. He was really good at his job, did tons of things, and this was going to be the Primevals. Now, what happened was they had a lot of stop motion, and they could never finish the stop motion, and unfortunately, Dave Allen passed away. But Charlie Band wanted to finish the movie, so he went ahead and they finished it, and they released it this year or last year, and it's getting a wide Blu-ray, DVD, and stuff like that this year. So yeah, it was pretty exciting to see a movie that was basically finished except for some stop motion effects. So they went through and it's no cheap task, and Full Moon's known for being a lot of movies on a budget. So they went through and they basically did all this stop motion like effects like they used to do. So the plot is crazy. The plot is almost kind of like something like Demon Warp or one of these Jules Verne stories, Journey to the Center of the Earth, one of these kind of amazing adventure movies that even somebody like Juan Piqueur Simon would do in the early 80s, like Mystery on Monster Island. It's definitely in that kind of vein, these adventure kind of movies. There's some horror tinge to it, but it mixes in a lot of kind of crazy things like this, a lot of, So essentially what happens is somebody discovers kind of like an abominable snowman, a Yeti type creature, and it's dead. And this tribe had a big problem with them. The indigenous people had a big problem with them. And they get the Yeti, or whatever it is, the Bigfoot, to kind of like the States, and they're examining and everything. They realize that someone has performed some sort of brain surgery on this fucking thing, which is insane to think, right? They have this Yeti, and that's crazy enough. It reminds me of Horror Express, right? So they find this arthropodal find that is like the biggest in the world, and they're looking at it like this is a missing link, and then you find out what's inside of it is actually like an alien like thing type creature that's taken over its body, and that's so cool. In this one, they figure out that it's had its brain worked on. So that's why it's become aggressive. So they go to kind of look for it, try to find a live specimen, and of course they're hostile. It appears that someone is performing these surgeries. Somewhere is performing human experiments. They're not human experiments. That line from that trailer popped right in my head when I thought that. So someone's performing these experiments on these creatures, so they're trying to figure it out. We have all these people that are interested. We have like a tough as nails, like kind of big game hunter. We have a couple other, and the main kind of guy and his love interest. They're kind of more scientist type and whatnot, and they're invested in that kind of deal. So they're going to look for what the hell's happening. And as they start to get deeper, they find kind of like this like a Lost World kind of style thing, with all these magical kind of looking things in there and stuff like that. But what they do find is alien creatures. And if you're looking for Bigfoot, why not have aliens as well? So it's kind of like a big kind of adventure thing. It's kind of a family-friendly movie. It's not really gratuitous. There's a couple characters that do die, but they are set up well and they have good endings and everything like this. All in all, it was really cool to see this movie completed. I kind of like the idea. There's been a couple that have been kind of movies. New York Ninja was another one that was completed and finished after years and years. And I know Full Moon did the Evil Clergyman and things like that. So a lot of movies that were supposedly lost kind of surfaced, and there's elements with this one because it was just not completed. So yeah, this is really fun. The special effects are really cool. The stop motion is just something that is magical. It's something that's it's past and it's gone, but it's never forgotten, and people have an affinity for it. There's a lot of handcraft stuff to it. I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything different when it comes to this, but the Primevals is a lot of fun. It's not a perfect movie. It's a very low budget film, but it's a lost film that's got restored and to the best of their abilities and did it pretty cool. And kind of like the alien lizard-like creatures are awesome. Some of them are very detailed. Yeah, this is a really cool movie, and I'm glad. A civilization lost in time invaded 1 million years ago. Very cool, the Primevals. Okay, this next one here is from 88 Films, and this is a Shaw Brothers flick, and this is The Golden Lotus. And I was thinking this is going to be kind of one of their big tentpole kind of big, historical drama kind of movies. I know that, Shaw Brothers did a couple of those, and a lot of the other companies and Taiwan co-productions did those kind of things as well, like Beauty of Beauties. So I really didn't know about Golden Lotus. I know that the Shaw Brothers dipped in a lot of a kind of erotica, and this kind of leans more into the erotica. So what we have here is kind of this, I don't know his actual title, but he is, kind of rich. He's a lord, kind of a duke or some sort. So he kind of does whatever he wants. It's the kind of times where princes have a wife and they have many concubine that they take in, and they have multiple wives, all this kind of thing like that. So what happens is he starts to, this guy has a very huge sexual appetite, and at first you really don't understand this, right? You think it's almost going to be like this forbidden love that they tried to keep us away from each other, but it gets really dark and really kind of nasty at points. So this woman is married to this kind of a dwarf kind of character who is deformed, and he works really hard. They make like pancakes, and she's just not happy. She's sexually frustrated. So this king catches her, kind of this nobleman catches her, and he's very interested in her. He's a handsome guy, and he starts talking to somebody that the older lady that knows her, and he's like, well, I want you to set up kind of a date. I want you to kind of set up circumstances where she sees me and we can kind of do the thing. So what happens is basically they start to sleep together because we're real like con-like by this guy and this woman, and they start having this affair. Of course, the dwarf guy figures it out because Jackie Chan, a young performance by Jackie Chan here, who started the Shaw Brothers movies, who's in a lot of your early Shaw Brothers films, kind of rats him out, and what happens is this old man gets injured really bad by this guy, and he kind of escapes, and what happens is, the dwarf is brothers with this kind of war hero who's very dangerous and very respected, and they're worrying that he's going to retaliate if they don't figure something out. So it gets really fucking dark really quick, and there's some murders happening and some really dark stuff, and she ends up becoming married to this guy, and at first you think it's going to be great, but this guy is not a great guy. Either is she, honestly, from the things that she did. So we have these characters that we established in the beginning. They were going to have this forbidden love, and maybe it's going to be kind of this deal. But after a while, you're like, no, this is just kind of fucked up historical drama about these two people. They got involved in each other, and they actually dig deeper into the kind of weird mental problems that they have and kind of fucked up things that they do. By the end of the movie, of course, it's not going to end very well for either of these people, but it gets darker and it gets more twisted and more characters are in there, and you just realize this guy is a sex maniac and he's just horrible to people. But overall, it's a pretty good film. It kept my attention. There is some sex and nudity and some, kind of mean-spirited stuff happening in here, so it is kind of your typical Shaw Brothers kind of movie in that aspect. It's not exactly a kung fu movie or a horror film, but it does deliver on some of the stuff that you guys probably are looking for. That image right there is one of those images that I think people will remember from the movie. It's pretty iconic. As far as special features are concerned, we have 4 collectible art cards, HD transfer, and then we have 2-point Mandarin mono with English subtitles. So not too many special features on here, but yeah, this one is interesting enough that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I expected at all, which is a good thing, the Golden Lotus. Okay, this next one is a wild film, and this is Viva la Muerte, and this is directed by, the director is a very famous director, Fernando Arrabal, and he had a big set, a couple sets on DVD released from Cult Epics back in the day, and they always say this guy's like a contemporary of Alejandro Jodorowsky, and this movie I definitely can see it. This is a wild, wild film from 1971, spoken in France. It's a historical, kind of timepiece here. It talks about, the big Spanish Civil War, if my understanding, and it mixes reality with fantasy. So this movie, it's also an art film, it's also a historical drama, it's also a coming of age story. So you're like, that's a lot of shit going in here. So if you know anything about that movement, they call it the Panic Movement, which I didn't know too much about. I was familiar with Alejandro Jodorowsky's movies, who was a South American, director who moved to like France and stuff like that at a very young age, kind of started making movies and all these kind of things, and he became like this cult icon. This director also, had the same similar trajectory when he's making cult films, and they're wild and crazy. And he also did like Car Cemetery, but Viva la Muerte. This is a movie that's going to take some time. Art films and these kind of strange kind of movies, and this is definitely a subgenre within that kind of art film that leans to the extreme and art. So like, it's going to appeal to art fans, avant-garde fans, and it's also going to appeal to people that like extreme cinema, like people that are willing to see animals be killed on film for their art and stuff like that. So it's very kind of iffy for a lot of people. It's not something you can wholeheartedly recommend to a lot, and the plot and the structure is completely different from a lot of other films as well. So we follow this young boy whose father was kind of taken away and supposedly executed because he was a red, a communist, kind of ultra left-wing kind of person during this kind of civil war with fascist government and everything like that, and obviously their side lost, so he was executed apparently. But the mother is also possibly involved with this, so he has a lot of weird feelings towards his mother, all these kind of confusion and everything like that. So what happens is we kind of see his reality with fantasy kind of blend throughout the film, and we have these kind of ideas of what happened to his father through his eyes. So we'll have it in gorgeous film, and then all of a sudden we'll switch to VHS and all these kind of things like that. And we'll have a guy, his father, like flashback with his whole buried in there, his head buried in there. And then there's times when we have like reality, and then all of a sudden the kid will imagine kind of something carrying it on, like, well, what if this happened? And then we'll have like this uprising of these people who are picking grapes that are wearing muzzles so they don't eat the fucking grapes, which is crazy. To think, are the muzzles really worth it, paying for those muzzles? How many grapes could they fucking eat in the first place? How cruel is all this kind of deal? So it goes on, it gets a little bit more extreme, and if anybody has a problem with real animal death, which I think most people do not enjoy watching it on films at all, but there's definitely that in here. We see, kind of lizards being manhandled, but we get to the point where there's a whole like row of dead sheep, and we have a slaughter of a bull, which is really graphic and actually one of the craziest things. And even the way this film, it shoots like animal cruelty. There's a beetle that is cut in half with a razor blade, and for some reason, kids used to do that shit all the time growing up. They'd step on ants, they'd scrape ladybugs and kill all sorts of things, the lightning bugs they take there. But just watching it on camera, being like a voyeur in it and watching it, it's just kind of bothersome. It really is, actually. Even an insect, I do not enjoy watching it. But yeah, it's just a crazy film, and I was listening to like the special features and everything like that, and I was like, I'm a little lost on a lot of this stuff. It's not first time watch for me, so it's like it's one that these films are best discussed by a panel of people. So the special features really helped out here. We have an audio discussion from the Projection Booth podcast, which I love because Mike White does a great job. Also, Heather Drain is on there. Honestly, Projection Booth is probably the most solid all-around podcast there is when it comes to like covering a lot of a wide array of films and cult films and doing a very good job and in-depth analysis and have guests on. I think Projection Booth is the podcast to try to beat. If you're looking to be a great podcast, I think Projection Booth's where it's at when you're talking film. And that's a great conversation. They talk a lot about the director and correspondence, how they almost got him to be on the show. Lots of things like that to talk about the movie, what it means, all these different things like that. And it helped me kind of understand this. And sometimes if you're familiar with an art film for a very long time, or any film, a little bit more because you watched it so much, you dissected it, you've talked about it, you've read things about it, but this is a first time watch. Sometimes you need to kind of have that discussion, that look into this movie, and I think that really helped doing it on this. So Viva la Muerte, the special features, helped me understand this a bit. Did I love the movie? Not exactly, but do I I'm interested in it? I think it's definitely worth watching, and I think with repeated viewings you could gain more from it. Besides that, there's also In the Footsteps of Baal, a short film documentary about by Ben Amar capturing Arrabal at work on Viva la Muerte. Vidar Arrabal, a feature-length documentary on Arrabal by Xavier Pastel Baron, featuring interviews with Myers, friends and family. New interview with scholar and Spanish cinema expert David Archibald. New trailer, image gallery, reversible sleeve featuring original and newly commissioned artwork. Booklet featuring new writings by Sabina Stent. An archival interview with Arrabal, who I believe is still alive. I'm not. If he did die, it's been more recently. Yeah, but this is a wild film. So if you're big into art films, or you're big into historical dramas or coming of age movies that kind of, or extreme films, I think this could kind of be, as an example. I think this could work as an example of all those, and I think people interested in those kind of things might like this one. But it's definitely not for everybody. It's definitely a movie that, is not an easy watch, if you know what I mean by that, in multiple ways, kind of ways. Yeah, Viva la Muerte from Radiance Films. Okay, the next one is from Dark Force Entertainment, and this is Texas Detour. That's right, starring Patrick Wayne, but more importantly for me, it stars my man Cameron Mitchell and R.G. Armstrong. I love both those actors. This is 1978, kind of exploitation flick. It's kind of a hangout flick, kind of like, what the fuck is even going on here? So what we have is a pair of three siblings that are traveling cross country. The main guy driving is Patrick Wayne. He is a stuntman. He's on his way to get to, I think California to shoot some stunts for this movie, and he's driving his super van, not to be confused with the actual Supervan from that really weird movie Supervan. So essentially what happens is he gets pulled over by a gang of crooks, and they steal his Supervan. So they're just gonna get revenge and get their Supervan back. They talk to the sheriff, and R.G. Armstrong, who's one of my favorite actors, who's in everything from Children of the Corn to Major Dundee, all these Sam Peckinpah movies, right? Just a great classic actor. And he's in this, which is funny. I just recently rewatched Race with the Devil, and he's also the sheriff in that, which I love Race with the Devil. But yeah, a different kind of sheriff. But so he's basically, we'll get your van back. We want you to get the hell out of here ASAP. The kind of small town hospitality we're used to in these kind of backwoods kind of, exploitation flicks. So meanwhile, a young kind of very good-looking daughter. Oh, it's actually Anthony James is the one who invites him, not the daughter. So Anthony James is in all sorts of things. Like, I think most people would know him from, he's in a couple Clint Eastwood movies, but his big one is, he's in The Unforgiven. He's Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. He's the bartender, and he's got a great scene in that movie. Great character in that. Anthony James has got that look, right? He's got a tall, lanky kind of character actor kind of looking guy. So he says, well, these guys can come back and work for my dad and have a place to stay. Their dad is Cameron Mitchell. He kind of runs this town. He's a big shot. Love Cameron Mitchell. Always fun. And he has a daughter as well. The daughter starts having eyes for your kind of Patrick Wayne, while the son starts having eyes for the sister. She does not like this guy. So obviously there's some turmoil there, and we kind of realize that Anthony James is just a piece of shit all around. He starts fights at bars and gets his buddies to beat people up, and we're kind of losing sight of the van here, but that's kind of the plot of the movie. What happens is there's going to be some turmoil because Anthony James does some stuff that people do in exploitation movies. There is a line in here that they do mention in the commentary. Joe Rubin's on here. It's one of these crazy Dark Force kind of commentaries, with Demon and Joe, and it's really funny and goofy, but they're just having a lot of laughs and doing a good job. It's funny. It's a comedic kind of commentary. But I remember just laughing out loud because it was such a ridiculously crazy line that Cameron Mitchell says in here, and he's just good at playing those kind of characters that can say those outlandish fucking things, and I always love watching him, and he's good in here, and I love watching him boss around R.G. Armstrong in this film. Overall, Texas Detour is a fun kind of exploitation film. It looks really good on Blu-ray. It sounds pretty solid as well. It's an amazing, crazy movie with gratuitous amounts of violence and sex and everything. No, it's not that. It's just kind of a hangout exploitation film that has some bits of nastiness with a couple good character actors in it. It's kind of what you would expect. Texas Detour, worth checking out if you like this sort of thing. Okay, the next one here is from 2011, and I have not watched this since it came out, and I remember really liking it. And this is Red State by Kevin Smith. I'm talking about this movie on a podcast. I won't tell you which one until it's live and everything like that, but Red State, Kevin Smith. So this stars, of course, Michael Parks and John Goodman. Kevin Pollak is in here. Stephen Root. There's a bunch of other people as well. James Parks, Michael Parks' son. So, So I don't know why I do this. Sometimes I do this myself. I read negative reviews of movies I like, and I'm like, why the fuck? And so I guess I can argue their counterpoints. It gives me something to talk about. So it's like arguing with yourself on a podcast. You're both parts. But people are saying that it's on the nose, that Red State's on the nose. And it's like some movies can be on the nose, and they can still be good because they're truthful. And during this time, we had, the West Borough Baptist Church picketing soldiers' death and people who died of AIDS and stuff like that, and all sorts of crazy shit, right? Picketing dead soldiers, and it's just insane, right? So they go there and say all this horrible shit. So that's kind of where it's coming at. A time in, like, when people were so appalled by that shit. I think it's probably everyday kind of occurrences now. It feels like it, But, people were very appalled by that sort of thing, right? Where these extremists were just kind of upsetting everyone, religious extremists. And at the same time, people still had the kind of Waco kind of thing fresh in their heads. I mean, still fresh in their heads, right? I mean, people like true crime and people like to read about these cults and these stories and what's happened to them. And there's a whole big ATF fuck up with a lot of these kind of cults and everything like that. So that's also here. So essentially what we have another, I can't think of the guy's actor. He popped up in Smile, and he's been doing Kyle something. He's been doing a lot of good work. He's a very good actor. He's in this as well. So we have these three kind of high schoolers. They live in this kind of town, around this town where we have the West Borough Baptist Church style people. They're way more violent, of course, led by Michael Parks and his cult, children on the compound and everything like that. So they're being led by him. And there's a sheriff who's in the closet, and Stephen Root. And you know what? Even in 13 years, 10 years, the homosexuality and stuff like that being accepted has changed a lot, I think. I mean, there's still obviously always going to be turmoil and problems with people not accepting other people. You're never going to be able to eliminate all that, but it does get better. Thankfully, all that kind of stuff gets better over the years, racism and stuff. I do think it gradually gets better, but I don't know if you'll ever be able to stamp that kind of stuff out. So Stephen Root's ashamed of it and everything like that, and he basically gets hit while these kids are joyriding. These kids are hooking up on apps to try to find, their high schoolers to try to sleep with this woman. And what's happening is the church is kind of abducting homosexualities and young teenagers trying to sleep with women in kind of multiple ways, and killing them in the name of God, right, to cleanse them because they deserve whatever. They're crazy, right? What happens is it gets really kind of complicated. The ATF gets called in by Stephen Root, who doesn't want to handle it himself in his jurisdiction and give away his cover that he's a homosexuality. John Goodman enters the picture, and he is an ATF agent. And John Goodman is one of the best actors of all time, if you ask me. I think he's fucking fantastic, and he's great in this too. He's got a lot of great one-liners. Him and Kevin Pollak have a good back and forth until something crazy happens. But, Kevin Smith, I do know his work. Funny enough, I never saw his first film, Clerks, which is crazy. I saw Mallrats. I saw Dogma. I saw Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I've seen Clerks 2. I've seen Tusk. I've seen this. I've seen Yoga Hosers. I've seen a lot of his films, but I have not seen his movie that made him, honestly. So I even seen his short from the Holidays movie. So I'm a fairly decent Kevin Smith fan. I'm not a fanatic, but this is personally my favorite movie from him, and it's completely different from him. And I know a lot of people say it's on the nose and they can't direct, but when he directs scenes where people are getting murdered or violent scenes, I think they kind of go that route where they're just kind of done in a disturbing way, which they should be, kind of, in a way. A lot of people always said Rob Zombie, even if they didn't like him, he could film death scenes particularly nasty and unpleasant, like even in the remake of Halloween when Michael Myers kills the guy in the woods, the kid in the woods, the bully, or in Devil's Rejects when you have that. And I do see some of that style in here when he's filming the violence or the gritty action, and there's crazy action. There's a long shootout. A big chunk of this movie is a shootout. John Goodman has fantastic lines in here. I'm not going to have my wife have to cut coupons the rest of her life because I didn't follow an order, and you're just, oh shit. But regardless, it's just I think it's really well acted. I think it's really intense, and I think it's really screwed up. And I think that they're judging how the government handles these situations and direct orders and all these things. And I think they're also judging on crazy religious fanaticism. And I think that these are two things that were very much on the spotlight in America at the time, and they still are in a lot of ways. So I mean, I don't think that is poor choice to hit it on the nose, because when it's so fucking right and not that many people are doing it, then it's good. This could have very typically been your kind of typical exploitation movie, right? We went down south and we got raped by some backwoods guys. Well, I don't know why the guy was getting raped said it. Sounds like that. But, it's just a generic kind of thing that they would do. Michael Parks has soliloquizing scenes, especially by himself at the end, which are fantastic. Him doing Michael Parks is a great actor when you give him this stuff, and he's doing a lot of this in one take, and you're just like, geez, man, this is so good. I really like this movie, and the end is kind of weird, kind of No Country for Old Men, kind of throwing you a curveball. Some people might not like it, but it's different, and I'm not always happy with different, but it's always interesting when it's different, and I like the ending here. People do the strangest things when they believe they're entitled, and they do even stranger when they just believe. So Red State, great stuff. All right, guys, let's hop into those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, who loves and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You call me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to. Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
Okay, the first one up is a rewatch. I think all four of these are rewatches that have been covered on the channel, and this is Deadly Games. It's kind of a semi-slasher film, kind of a bizarre one. The biggest name in here is Steve Railsback, who this same year did Turkey Shoot or Escape 2000, the Aussie movie, which is a really cool film. I'll be covering that with somebody on here. And then Steve Railsback also was in Helter Skelter, Devil's Rejects, Ed Gein, Life Force. Railsback has got a weird fucking career, man. Eddie's in here, as well as Dick Butkus, the football player, and everybody's favorite Brom Bones from the 1980 Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I like Dick Butkus in movies. He seems so charming and on scary, but he's a very aggressive football player at the time. Not this time, but beforehand, so I believe. So Deadly Games. This one opens up with a typical slasher kill, a woman kind of hearing somebody stalk her in this kind of beautiful like mountainside home and everything like that. There's nudity, and she dies in a pretty great, crazy, elaborate way. Gets thrown out the window, and you're like, all right. So we have a sheriff investigating, and we have a woman show up, and he's like, get out of here, no reporters. Turns out it's the girl's sister. She was from this small town, and she just wants to figure out why her sister died, to come pay her respects and everything. She runs into some old friends that she has a long history with. One of them is somebody that people really, she doesn't really like her. She's kind of snobby and rich, and we establish all these kind of characters and everything, and the dynamics amongst them and the men that kind of interact. And the sheriff starts having a thing with this girl, and they start to kind of date a little bit. Steve Railsback is the sheriff's buddy, and he is kind of physically kind of he's hurt. He has asthma. He can't breathe, so he can never partake when the boys are playing football. He can never partake in kind of just the everyday average life. What they do for fun though is they play this kind of board game, which I think was originally supposed to be Monopoly, but it's kind of been kind of worked to be kind of this universal horror kind of deal, and it seems like it has a lot of details. There's a lot of mummy references and stuff, and creature references, so it seems fun. And there is a universal horror movie game now, but so they kind of play that, and it cuts back to it. You'll see like little figurines and everything like that. So it starts to slow down, and we have a lot of like kind of I guess, would you say gender politics, or more so relationship politics among the people. People are sleeping with this person, people are sleeping with that person. Then of course they start getting picked off. There's a couple decent kills. One person gets buried the fuck alive. One of the kills, I guess, was cut from the movie, which is actually the director's girlfriend, who became his wife later on, of course, like that, but wasn't his girlfriend at the time until after the movie was finished. And so her death scene was cut, but the acting is decent. It's not amazing. Railsback is very bizarre. I some of the characters I do enjoy. There is a flash of nudity. It's a slasher, but it's more of a thriller, I would say. Overall, Deadly Games is interesting enough. I don't love it. I didn't love it the first time, but I like it enough. I mean, it's nice to see it on Blu-ray from Arrow Video. It's kind of a movie that, it's one of those slashers that is like, is it like that nobody probably thought was going to get a release? But as far as the special features are concerned, we have brand new audio commentary with Hysteria Continues, good podcast as well. Sudi's a Shit, a brand new interview with actor Ray Mansfield. Practical Magic, a brand new interview with special effects stunt coordinator John Eggett. Extensive image gallery featuring never before seen production photos and promotional material. Original trailer, original Who Fell Asleep screenplay. So overall, this is not a bad movie. Steve Railsback is out of his fucking mind, like always. I like this one decently. I think that the villain does have a layer of misogyny for sure in there, but Deadly Games, we're checking out 1982. Okay, the next one is from 88 Films as well, and this is a Shaw Brothers joint. This is Human Lanterns. Is this the last Shaw Brothers I have to watch, I think, for 82? I was hoping I'd get somebody on the episode, but I couldn't get it. Maybe next time we'll have that person on. But Human Lanterns. So this is by, what's the director's name? Chung Sun, and he's known for directing some violent films. This stars a couple of the 5 Venoms in here, or one of them for sure. Kind of familiar faces in this movie, like some of the bigger actors here. And Human Lanterns, this is the second time watch. This is a great horror movie. In fact, a lot of the horror movies I saw from Shaw Brothers this year, Curse of Evil, Hell Has No Boundary, Human Lanterns, are fucking great. Shaw Brothers is really getting good on their horror films, and they always were good. I mean, I like a lot of them. Lost Souls from 1980, 1981 it had Bewitched and Corpse Mania. So there's a lot of cool Shaw Brothers films in the early 80s and the 70s and 60s and 90s. I don't think they were making too much horror in the 90s. They might have been kind of iffy, right? So Human Lanterns. This movie is a period piece. It's fucking bonkers. The killer looks amazing. I'm sure you've seen him. He's on the cover. He's got a very iconic thing, and there's some Texas Chainsaw shit to this movie. So what we have here is kind of these two kind of guys who are known for being kind of like rich and respected in their town. They have a lot of money. They're like I don't want to say lords again like that. They don't like each other, and they're kind of at each other's throats, and there's kind of they duel, and the one guy can't beat him, and he has animosity towards him, right? So he's like, screw it, I'm gonna go and get like the best lanterns for this festival. I'll be able to beat this guy. I want to figure out where these lanterns are coming from. So he approaches this old man, and this old man says, well, I don't make them, I actually know this guy makes them. And he kind of goes into this weird place and finds this weird guy that he has a history with, and this guy's like, he's like, I know you, man. He's like, we fought over this girl 7 years ago, and I got her, and she's mine. So you're like, okay, what's going to go on here? He's like, I'll make your lanterns for you, all right? And he's just creepy. He's got the scar on his face, and he starts to, people start to disappear on both sides of these people's life. Kind of a concubine that they both like, and then somebody's sister disappears, and somebody's wife disappears, and these guys are starting to think that they're after each other. An assassin enters the fold. Maybe that's the other 5 deadly venom in here, but they enter the fold, and tries to kill one of them, and it gets complicated, and people are being kidnapped and kind of like stabbed, and they're being skinned and turned into human lanterns. Yes, that's right, skinning them, Texas Chainsaw style. So you're like, holy shit. But these guys are at each other's throats until they figure out that they really probably should be working together to go after this crazy killer who's always cackling with his long, weird, wild hair. Cinematography's great, the sets are great, the music is cool. The plot is great, and the gore is there. There's a rape scene, of course, it's the early 80s, so that's going to be in there. And yeah, there's a good showdown at the very end where we kind of have almost like this big universal, like, kind of set crashing in, and everybody the whole thing catching fire. But I really enjoy Human Lanterns. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a really good Shaw Brothers movie, and I think a lot of people will enjoy this. I bet it gets better with multiple viewings. This is the second time watch, so yeah, great stuff here. It looks good. Great Blu-ray from 88 Films. What we have here is audio commentary by Kenneth Brorjan and Phil Gideon of the Podcast on Fire Network, a Shaw Story interview with Susan Shaw by Farik Armazin, and she talks about, being boycotted at the top of her career because somebody said she was a China doll while she was working in Hong Kong, and Taiwan didn't want anything to do with her after that. So that's an interesting story. The Beauty and the Beast interview with Linda Chu. Then we also have The Ambiguous Hero by Arnaud Lacouille. So anyways, a great release from 88 Films, a great movie from 1982, Human Lanterns. Next up, we have one from VCI, and it is The Aftermath, directed by Steve Barkett. And this is a post-apocalyptic independent movie here. And this has so much kind of like love put to it. And this is the second time watch as well. This AKA was Zombie Aftermath. I think it made the Section 3 Video Nasty list. And this has, Sid Haig as Cutter, the villain. And it also has, why am I forgetting the guy from Famous Monsters here? Oh, geez, why did I forget his name? My brain completely lost it. Forey Ackerman. Jeez, I had to look. I can't believe it. So Forey Ackerman is also in here. So we follow 3 astronauts that can't get a signal from space, and they're like, what's going on here? They crash land. One of them dies. One of them is kind of Steve Barkett, the director, is the main star here. And he makes it to the land, and he realizes something's off. He finds his buddy, his other astronaut, and they're running into like weird zombie mutants at points. And there's also kind of this weird kind of Mad Max style villain group going around and raping and killing women. Killing all the men, taking the children, and raping all the women, and all this kind of stuff like that. They're going around. They're led by, of course, Sid Haig. So this guy kind of Barkett, he ends up trying to find this. There's like a big storm coming, and you can't be out in it. And he finds this like kind of old house, and he goes in, and Forey Ackerman's there, and he tells him, I'm dying of cancer. I'm not doing very well, but you can stay here. There's a young boy, actually played by Barkett's real life son, and he realizes that this old man's going to die, and he has to take care of this kid. So he kind of starts his kind of mission on there. He runs into a survivor that got away from Cutter's group that tries to kill him. They fall in love and everything like that. And of course, Cutter, they go after Cutter at one point, have a run-in with him, and he's very salty about what happened because they rescued this girl's friend and her kids and all like that. So Cutter comes after them, and we're going to have this big back and forth in a post-apocalyptic world. Now, this is really ambitious for a film on a budget. Barkett himself, you can tell he put a lot of personnel stuff in here. A lot of the speeches he has are his beliefs and everything like that. And, he says basically love is everything. You know what I mean? So, like, overall, the message, it's crazy. When you get into, like, the post-apocalyptic world and survivalist world, you start getting these points. And what he says in the commentary and all these kind of special features, he says, and I like it. He's like, survival over everything is not what it is. Love over everything. Sacrifice yourself to help other people, them to survive. And you're like, you know what? This movie ends kind of in a crazy way. And overall, I like it. I think it's good. I think it never stops in the action. It's always entertaining. There's always fights going on, or shootouts going on, or character development going on. And the guy comes across decent in the movie as the lead, as well as directing. And there's plenty of action, and there's plenty of story, and there's a little bit more than your typical post-apocalyptic, like, heartless, callous, cynical movie. It's not that. There's a lot of heart in here, and the aftermath shows it. I enjoyed watching it this time even more than I did before. Sid Haig is pretty good bad guy. He's always good in that, and Forey Ackerman's good too. And this is one of the bigger roles I've seen Forey Ackerman in. Usually he's in the background or something like that. Like Return of the Living Dead 2, they make him take his glasses off and shit. You're just like, why have him in the movie, So, like, this is a good role for them. The music is old school, kind of older than it should be, but it works for the movie, and I know that he wanted it to be like that. But overall, this movie has a decent amount of features in here, too. I feel like DEFCON 4 came, 1985, kind of ripped it off a little bit. But, I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic world, so you could say that this ripped off Mad Max with Road Warrior, more so the Road Warrior. But, so we have... special effects by 3 times. Okay, we have the bonus director's commentary, video supplements featuring bonus interviews with Fred Olen Ray, Stan Livingston, composer John Morgan, Chris Barkett, that's the son, theatrical trailer, behind-the-scenes photos, and more. Plus Nightcrawler, an award-winning short starring Steve Barkett based on the Ray Bradbury story. So yeah, good stuff. Would recommend it. Good movie. Good movie. Okay, the next one up here, the last from 1982, is an Italian film. I don't know if this is a co-production or not, but it stars Janet Argan and David Warbeck. That's right. This is Panic, a.k.a. Bacterium. This is pretty standard kind of sci-fi horror stuff. What we have here is a scientist is he uses like some sort of experimental contagion. It gets on him. He turns into a mutant man, like Incredible Melting Man. And this whole small town's got to get shut down, and they're all kind of they're stuck in here. It's on quarantine, and he's walking around killing people. And when they find the bodies, he's just kind of ripped them to pieces. He looks like, he's got a bunch of giant pus marks, stuff like that. It's kind of like in the sci-fi vein of The Bean from 81, which wasn't widely released till 83 or something like that. And, those kind of, contamination kind of, you're stuck in your kind of little location, the crazies kind of deal. There is a big scene that takes place in a movie theater, which I can't help but think was inspired by The Blob, 1958, a sci-fi classic, and then later remade in 1988. So I think that movie theater scene was probably in there. Isn't there a drive-in scene in The Bean as well? So, all kind of weird shout-outs to the original Blob, I imagine. But, so Panic is just okay. David Warbeck, he had a good career starting off and early. He was in a couple Hammer horror movies, like Twins of Evil he was in, and then did a Freddie Francis one. But then, he was in a couple Fulci movies, like Black Cat and, of course, The Beyond. So, popping up in this in 82 is kind of, you could see him doing a couple more before he got out of there. And he did all the way up until, like, the late 80s with, Ratman and shit like that. Ark of the Sun God. Janet Argan, her career started off, I've had too big. With Italian horror, I know she was in probably some of the stuff in the 70s, but big for me is Eaten Alive in 1980 as well, by Umberto Lenzi, and, of course, City of the Living Dead by Lucio Fulci. So, yeah, she's in those two ones, and then she stuck around in Italy a bit. She might have been Italian herself. I don't know too much about Janet Argan. I think that's probably a fake name. She did, this one. She plays a scientist in here. She doesn't get that much to do, and this isn't Warbeck's best performance. He doesn't get all that much to do. It's really him and, like, three other cops riding around trying to figure out where this monster is gone, because there's a clock, right? They got to beat the clock. If they don't stop this monster, it's going to spread. Even though the monster touches and scratches a kid on the leg, it attacks Warbeck, and nobody seems to contract anything. Nobody ever seems to actually get any sort of disease or spread or anything like that. So they're talking about this contagion or anything, and you're like, nobody's getting anything. So I don't know what the fuck. And they gotta destroy him before the bomb is dropped at a certain time, which is a common thing, right? You get your race towards the clock kind of deal. They didn't get Return of the Living Dead. Deaded, like they do in that, right? But anyways, Panic is okay. You can watch it in Italian or English with subtitles. Overall, there's not much here. The monster is a gooey, blobby, pimple kind of guy. They don't establish who he is before he turns, but Janet Argan's trying to save his life, so you don't really have much stakes with him. You're like, just kill the fucker and let's not get blown up. It's overall okay. The special effects are decent. The director did a couple other movies too. I can't remember. I think he did something in horror. Tonino. Geez, I can't think of his name. But overall, Panic is just okay. When I watched it before, I thought it was a little. It's average, not horrible, but it's all right. Code Red Blu-ray here. Okay, the Patreon pick is from 1989. It's Gus Van Sant's directorial debut, and this is Drugstore Cowboy, starring Kelly Lynch, Matt Dillon, James Remar, Eric Stoltz, and Heather Graham. It's a nice little cast right there. This is the first time I've ever saw Drugstore Cowboy. And when I was watching this, I was like, what is this crime movie? It seems very dated, and I was like, this is a dark comedy, right? This has a lot of dark comedy in it. The weird superstitious stuff going on. I think the Gus Van Sant movies I was familiar with is, of course, the Psycho remake, unfortunately, and Elephant. Elephant I remember watching. Pretty controversial film at the time. But yeah, this is his first film, and this is one of the more popular. I know it has a cult kind of thing. Matt Dillon, if you ever needed like a bad kid or like a bad young man addicted to drugs, you're like, put Matt Dillon in that movie. He'll do a great job. So he was like always in those kind of kids revolt movies, right? And he always did a really good job. Always like seeing Matt Dillon. I think he's good in this too. He plays a bizarre character. Kelly Lynch is really good too. It's not Eric Stoltz. Why did I say Eric Stoltz? I meant James Lee Gross. Sorry, I confused Eric Stoltz and James Lee Gross. Will you forgive me? James Lee Gross from Phantasm 2 and a bunch of other movies as well. He's in Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he is in that movie Thursday, another crime film. But Heather Graham is good as well. So it follows, four characters. We have this narration going over, and they're drugstore cowboys, right? They kind of rob drugstores for what kind of drugs they can get. They sell the leftovers. They get high. And it's kind of a crummy life to live, right? At one point, something really tragic happens, and Matt Dillon decides to turn his life around. And that's when it kind of goes from like being a wild, kind of dark comedy, kind of intense crime thing, to becoming kind of a depressing kind of reflection and everything like that is dark. William S. Burroughs is also in the movie. He's got some good stuff. Of course, he wrote Naked Lunch and a lot of other things, and I had a drug problem forever, so his obviously is definitely some purposely done casting. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. There's points when I found really funny, of course, when it's the weird superstitious stuff about hats on beds and dogs and like that whole story. Like, yeah, it seems sad, but it's also like when he's like, the dog brought him back to the house, and you're like, this is so silly. It's so ridiculous at the same time, but it's got a weird kind of gloomy feel, like a hangover feel to me, at least. Like I said, the movie that was Angst, the 1983 movie, has like a hangover feel. Like the look of it and everything feels like you just woke up really fucking with a bad hangover in high school, and like go to breakfast, and then like at first you seem fine, and then everything just gets more dreary as it goes on. You pass out, you wake up at 8 o'clock in the evening, and you're like wasted your whole fucking day. Very depressing kind of state in the look of it, but there's like a dark comedy to it. James Remar is intense. He's good in it, as always. Max Perlich is in here too. He always kind of played like a little slimy kind of guy. He's like Kevin Pollak was always, not Kevin Pollak, Kevin Corrigan was always in these kind of movies in that role too, but Kevin Corrigan was more trustworthy. Like, he wasn't the sleazy like one. He was like kind of like the guy who's always down, like kind of brother. He pops up in Goodfellas and a bunch of movies. Some guy who kills people. But Max Perlich's in this. It seems like a kind of just a sleazy little guy. I know he's in a bunch of movies. Wasn't he? Is he the guy? Is he in Cliffhanger? But I know he's in fucking Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. But Drugstore Cowboy, good stuff. Had not seen it in ever. So it was a first time watch, and I did enjoy it. I don't think the Blu-ray is widely available. There's an imprint Australian Blu-ray that you can import. I don't think the American release has ever had one, or it's not widely available. It seems like it could be a Criterion. But yeah, good stuff. Let's get to questions, comments, and concerns, all that jazz. Oh, my knees are popping. So Ken Coakley, you said that you aren't familiar with the lead actor from Jekyll and Hyde. So you get there again. I'm a fan, so I'll give you some info. You may not have heard of Mark Blankfield, but he has worked with some actors and comedians you, in all likelihood, are familiar with. The first time I heard of Mark Blankfield, he was a regular cast member on a skit show called Fridays. The show was live from Los Angeles and West Coast rival Saturday Night Live. That was much more hip. While SNL was still having James Taylor, Ricky Jim Jones, Paul Simon, and all the safe soft rock, Fridays had more hip punk and new wave acts such as The Clash, The Plasmatics, The Pretenders, Elvis Costello, The Jam, and so on. I felt like this guy was from skit comedy. The show premiered in 1980, ABC opening with a skit of a producer telling the cast that they were accused by some of ripping off Saturday Night Live. The camera then pans to the cast wearing Coneheads, Blues Brothers, and Killer Bee costumes. Some of other cast members included Larry David as Seinfeld, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Michael Richards from Seinfeld, as well as Problem Child, Bruce Marr, who played Axel in the corner of the Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Darren Igus, who at the time appeared in John Carpenter's The Fog. There was a skit on the show that parodied Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. It was called Diner of the Living Dead. It was about a couple on vacationing, stopping by a diner where the whole staff and the customers are zombies except for the vacationing couple. The wife is terrified, but the husband has when in Rome kind of attitude. Mark Blankfield and Tim Thomerson were stand-up comedians who were friends, so I assume that Thomerson got the role in Jekyll and Hyde together through Blankfield. Before his career in Full Moon, Thomerson started out as a comedian who appeared on a game show called Make Me Laugh. The point of the game was an audience member sits in the seat and has to go through three comics who are given 2 minutes each to make them laugh. If the contestant went the minutes total without laughing, they won money. If they laughed, they got nothing. The show was popular when I was in junior high. All my friends loved Tim Thomerson. Other comedians on the show varied from week to week. They had Gary Shandling, Bob Saget, Paul Mooney, to name a few. Tim Thomerson also played the cop trying to find Eric Binford in Fade to Black, as well as the helicopter pilot going to Vietnam and rescue POWs in Uncommon Valor with Gene Hackman, Patrick Swayze, Fred Ward, Red Brown, and Tex Cobb. He's also in a slew of movies, Near Dark, of course, the Full Moon movies, Doll Man and Trancers. He's in Cherry 2000. I'm going to say this. Tim Thomerson, underrated actor. Back to Jekyll and Hyde. The movie reminded me of Dan Aykroyd film Dr. Detroit, which I liked as well. I have Jekyll and Hyde and Student Bodies, a double feature disc from Olive. Episodes of Fridays can be found on the Shout Factory channel if you want to check them out. On a somber note, Mark Blankfield passed away last March at 73 years old. R.I.P. Mark, thanks for the Fridays. R.I.P. I watched a bunch of the films that were first-time watches. One of them was Ginger Snaps. I kept putting it off thinking it was a horror movie for teeny boppers. I turned it off after the first 2 minutes because of the dead dog. Then I turned it back on thinking there wouldn't be any more dead dogs. I wish someone had told me that this movie showed dead dogs being discovered all through the movie. I bit my lip when the elder girl kicked the Rottweiler. I didn't like this one at all. That same night I watched Abigail for the first time. That was the best horror film I've watched in years. Dan Stevens was unrecognizable with his fake American accent and thick glasses. I liked the kid. She was, really funny. Dan Stevens is a good actor, man. And when I saw him in The Guest, he was fantastic. I like Ginger Snaps. It's been a very long time since I've watched it. Some people just really don't like dead dogs. There's some movies when there's animal cruelty for real in it that I'm like, if the movie didn't have any of it right from the beginning and there's just a throw in at one point, I'm like, why? Why are we doing this late? It's fucked up. Kentucky Kentucknator, I want to apologize for my lack of recent comments. I lost my pervert card and finally received one in the mail. Thank God. I was going to call the police. I knew you were watching some shit still and you shouldn't have been. Disgusting. Ja Punk, I already missed the technical difficulties of last episode. It gave me a busted theatrical vibe to otherwise sleek video experience. Ha. Angela 150, welcome back, James. I love 80s horror movies and those reviewed are great. Valola Flera is from my country, Serbia. Thank you for the info. As always. Nick Mo from Belgium. For a second there, I thought that Paul Walker movie Joyride had gotten a Blu-ray release. Guess the joke is on me. Is it just me, or do the Evil Child movie become scary as we get older? Jekyll and Hyde together again seems like a laugh fest, very much like Abbott Costello, Meet Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I don't know if the little kids get scary or not to me. Questions. How would you deal with Devil Times 5 situation? I mean, I would leave if I could, and if I had to defend myself, I'd kill them. I mean, like in The Children from 2008, they killed him. And in The Children 1980, they kill him. In The Child, it all depends. All those movies are so wildly different. Did you ever go for a joyride in your teens or early 20s? Yeah, of course. The first joyride I went on, my friend, got a car. He was 16, and he was speeding down the road on the block. It was a little snowy, and he did a spin, and he dented another car. He fucking panicked. Who would stand in for Abbott Costello today? Nobody. I don't know, though. I really don't know. Who's a great... We'd have to find out, comedians that do live stand-up, I think, would be the best that are not known. Till next week, if the world hasn't drowned or gone to hell, that is. Yep. MJ Giuliano Gemma is a fantastic actor. He's in so many great movies, always very charming. I agree. Larry Fleetwood, Even Angels Eat Beans, 73 is one of my favorite Gemma roles, or Gemma favorites. So sorry I lost the goddamn Patreon bag. I'm sorry. I'll have to figure it out. I'll have to go through all of them. Or if you guys just want to opt out for how many names you think are in the bag and just give me some, let me know if you can help me out. Otherwise, I'm going to go through and start throwing them in there. I might miss some. So that's what we're just going to have to do. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.